I never planned to come back. Not after what they did. But then came the envelope. It slid through the gap under my apartment door like a whisper. No stamp, no name. Just cream-colored cardstock with my old initials inked in bold, LW. I stared at it for 10 full seconds, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something less familiar, something less me. I hadn't seen those initials in a decade. The bookstore downstairs was quiet that day, as always. The regulars, mostly retirees and college kids hunting for old copies of Vonnegut, didn't notice when I left my shift early. The envelope sat heavy in my coat pocket, pulsing against my ribs. It felt radioactive. By the time I reached the law office, small, tucked between a deli and a dry cleaner in Midtown, I'd rehearsed 5 different versions of how this might play out. None involved seeing Mr. Calvin Ross again. He looked older, somehow softer than I remembered. His office smelled of cedar and forgotten truths. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, offering no handshake. "I wasn't sure either," I replied, dropping into the leather chair across from his desk. He didn't smile. Instead, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick manila file. "You've been officially dead for 8 years," he began. I raised an eyebrow. "That long?" "Declared deceased. Cause of death listed as non-recoverable overseas accident. It was filed with full parental consent, legally airtight." My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent. He slid the folder toward me. Inside, newspaper clippings, the fake obituary, and a single document stamped with the Whitmore family crest. "The reading of your grandfather's will is in 4 days," he said. "You're not on the public record, but he left you something. That's why you got the envelope." I skimmed the document. Harper's name was everywhere. Sole inheritor, executor, trustee. My name? Non-existent. As if I'd never been born, much less loved. "Harper gets everything?" I asked. Ross nodded. Unless what?" He reached into a second drawer. This time he handed me a folded piece of parchment. Handwritten, fragile, and unmistakable. "I found this among his personal items. Dated the month before your accident. It's not notarized, but the handwriting matches previous legal drafts. It names you as his primary heir." I unfolded it slowly, heart knocking in my ears. At the bottom was one line, penned in my grandfather's shaky script. "The truth never dies. Neither should you." Silence thickened. Outside, New York buzzed in its usual detached hum, but in that room, everything was still. Ross leaned forward. "Harper filed a newer will. It's legally cleaner, filed through my former partner's office, before I had access. But if we can prove forgery or coercion..." I didn't need him to finish. I knew how the Whitmores operated. Power first, truth never. I rose, the letter clenched in my hand like a blade. "They don't know I'm coming?" He shook his head. "Not yet, but if you do show up, be prepared. They buried you for a reason." As I stepped outside, the wind cut sharp through my coat. Midtown shimmered under autumn's dim sun, indifferent to ghosts returning. The envelope was still in my pocket. I pulled it out, ran my thumb over the embossed initials one more time, and wondered, had they always known I'd come back? I folded the letter once more, lit a cigarette I hadn't touched in years, and said aloud to the cold, "Let the ghosts remember who I was." The Whitmore estate hadn't changed much. Still proud, still full of ghosts. The gravel crunched beneath my boots like old bones cracking underfoot. Every window of the house stared down at me like an accusation, tall and cold and shuttered. Ivy still crawled up the stone walls, choking the edges like time itself had been trying to bury the place, just not fast enough. My breath fogged in the crisp November air as I paused at the foot of the front steps. "If you ever step foot here again, we'll make sure the law buries you twice." My father's voice echoed in my mind, cruel and clinical, like he was giving a boardroom directive rather than exiling his own daughter. I smoothed my coat, squared my shoulders, and knocked twice on the ancient wood door. It opened almost immediately. One of the old staff, Marie, or at least someone who looked like her, nodded at me without a word, then turned away. No smile, no welcome, just a silent gesture toward the hallway where my fate had already been arranged without me. I followed. The reading room hadn't changed either. Still dark walnut paneling, still the oversized fireplace cold with disuse, still the thick velvet drapes choking the daylight, and of course, still them. They were already seated. Harper, perfectly poised at the head of the long table, draped in cream cashmere and pearls. Her expression barely flickered when I stepped inside, but I saw it. The twitch in her jaw, the tightening at the corners of her eyes. "Lena," she said, standing. "You look alive." The smile didn't reach her eyes. Nothing ever did. Gregory, my father, looked up from the document in his lap. He blinked once, slowly, as if confirming I wasn't a hallucination. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Margaret, my mother, gave a little gasp, clutching a lace handkerchief. Too pristine, too prepared. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, tears already welling. "We didn't know. If we had—" I walked past her without flinching. Josh was seated at the far end. He didn't meet my gaze. His fingers fidgeted in his lap, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. Mr. Ross cleared his throat. "We're here to execute the last will and testament of Everett Whitmore, dated August 2nd of last year," he said, voice even, rehearsed. "The notarized copy you've all received lists Harper Whitmore as sole heir and executor of the Whitmore estate." Harper's smile spread just enough to bare teeth. Her manicured nails tapped once on the table. "As it should be." I stayed standing. Ross turned the page. "However," he added, and the room stiffened, "there exists a handwritten draft, previously undisclosed, in Everett Whitmore's personal belongings, naming Lena Whitmore as primary heir." A stillness fell like frost. "I'd like that draft reviewed," I said, my voice calm. "And compared to his previous will formats, I'm sure a handwriting expert would be enlightening." Harper laughed softly, almost musical. "Darling, you were legally dead. Dead people don't inherit." My gaze didn't shift. Funny how I keep disappointing people. Gregory exhaled heavily. Margaret dabbed a single tear. It didn't fall. Ross didn't comment. He simply noted something in his file and folded the papers. "We'll pause official execution pending further verification." Harper didn't like that. Her fingers curled into the table's edge. "You're wasting everyone's time," she hissed. "Then I guess it's time to resurrect myself," I whispered, just loud enough for them to hear. Later, as I stepped out onto the front porch, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Lena Whitmore?" the voice asked, young, sharp. "Who's asking?" "If you're the Lena Whitmore, I think you are. You've just made news." Truth is a patient weapon. It waits in silence, then strikes loud. The door to the basement groaned like something out of a horror film. I held the flashlight steady while Josh fumbled with the keys. The lock clacked open after a reluctant twist, and cold air spilled out as if the house exhaled secrets it had hoarded for years. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. "Good," I said. "Means we're close to something real." The staircase creaked with every step, and the dust hanging in the air was so thick it clung to my throat. This was where they buried everything. Old documents, expired tax files, broken furniture, and apparently their shame. Josh stayed quiet, but his shoulders were tense. I watched him scan the rows of labeled boxes, hesitating more than once when he passed familiar tags. He wasn't just helping me. He was reliving things too. He finally stopped in front of a battered file cabinet pushed into the far corner. "This one's from the accounting wing," he said, "back when the estate still ran partial books in-house." "Is it locked?" He didn't answer, just pulled the drawer. It stuck halfway, then jerked open with a screech that made both of us wince. Inside, piles of ledgers, neatly bound in cracked leather. Most were dated. I scanned for the year everything collapsed. 2013, I whispered. My fingers froze over the faded gold embossing. This is it. We carried the books to an old table in the center of the room. I opened the one from April, 3 months before the Whitmores declared me persona non grata. Line after line of transactions. Many standard. A few strange. Look at this, I said, pointing. These amounts, identical weekly withdrawals, but the memo line's blank. Josh leaned in, his brow furrowed. No vendor code, no check trail. There's a reference ID. I traced it. Same one repeated, every Friday. They were laundering through something. He hesitated. That's Harper's discretionary account code. She used it for private travel, I think. And if Dad used to warn her about it being off books. A silence settled. I could hear the hum of the old house breathing above us. You knew? I asked, not accusing, just tired. I suspected, he admitted. But when they blamed you, I didn't know how to say anything. I was just a kid. And Harper... He cut himself off. I flipped through more pages. There it was, the date of the supposed accident I'd never had. The same day another lump sum was pulled, this time wired to a numbered account offshore. She hadn't just covered her tracks. She'd detonated mine. The next drawer held more boxes, estate documents. I rifled through them, desperate for anything that might tie it all together. Then I saw it. Folded into a yellowed folder was a single sheet of paper, not printed, handwritten, Grandpa's handwriting. My chest tightened. I unfolded it carefully. It was dated July 9th, just a week before the forged version Harper presented. It named me, a full beneficiary, executor. He'd even included a personal note for Lena, the only one who never asked for more than truth. Josh leaned over my shoulder. This changes everything. It does if it's still valid, I said, pulling out my phone. My hands shook slightly as I dialed Ross. He picked up on the second ring. I found a draft, I said. Handwritten, from Grandpa. Dated before Harper's version. Can you send a photo? He asked immediately. We'll compare with prior samples. If the notarized version was filed under suspicious timing, we might have grounds to challenge. I snapped the photo, sent it, then turned to Josh. His face had gone pale, but determined. He pointed at the ledger again. There's enough here to show theft, even if they try to bury the will. The money trail leads straight to her. I nodded slowly. I'm going to package everything. Ledger scans, the will, statements. We'll bring it to court. Josh didn't speak for a moment. Then quietly, Harper didn't just steal your future. She buried you to build hers. I stared at the ledger. Every missing dollar had Harper's initials beside it. If they wanted to erase me, they should have burned the truth too. The garden was damp from a morning drizzle, the fog hanging over the hedges like a shroud. Autumn had drained the color from the roses, leaving them brittle and bruised at the edges. It was the perfect setting for a reckoning. Harper arrived 2 minutes late, just as I expected. She always made an entrance, timed, calculated, perfectly manicured. She stepped through the wrought iron archway with a neutral expression, the same mask she wore when lying through her teeth. You wanted to speak to me in private? She said, voice clipped. I did. I gestured to the stone bench beside the sundial. She hesitated before sitting, legs crossed, pearls tight around her throat. From the pocket of my coat, I pulled the folded letter, Grandpa's letter, and placed it gently on her lap. Her fingers curled around the paper without unfolding it. What is this? You should recognize the handwriting, I said. You spent enough time trying to forge it. Her nostrils flared. You're accusing me of something? I'm not accusing, I replied, calm, measured. I'm confirming. She unfolded the letter with surgical precision, eyes scanning the contents. For a moment, her mask held. Then it cracked. This doesn't change anything, she hissed. It's not notarized. It's worthless. It's dated a week before yours, I said. And it names me, not you. She stood abruptly. Where did you get this? You mean where did you forget to burn it? She looked like she might strike me, her hands trembling just slightly. I held my ground. Her fury smelled like desperation. Meanwhile, inside the house, Josh passed Mr. Ross a sealed envelope. They stood near the drawing room doors, casual to the untrained eye, but I knew what it was. The ledger, the proof, everything we needed. Ross opened it, nodded once, then slipped the packet into his briefcase. He didn't need to say anything. We both knew it was already sent. Digitized, filed, safe. I turned back to Harper. Your version of the will was filed through a third-party notary. Strange how that office no longer exists. That's not my problem, she spat. It is when they also signed 2 other conflicting wills in the same week, I said, my voice soft but sharp. Tends to raise questions. From across the estate, voices drifted through the mist. The extended family had begun arriving for the follow-up meeting. Cousins, uncles, aunts, some curious, some wary, all suspicious now. I'd spent the morning whispering seeds into just the right ears. It's strange how Harper handled the paperwork without consulting anyone. You remember Lena always helped Grandpa manage his records, right? Funny how the money trail stopped the week she disappeared. Doubt moved faster than fire. Harper knew it. I could see the flicker of panic start to take hold. She crushed the letter in her hand. You think this gives you power? She snapped. It's not real. None of this is. You're right, I said. It's not real. It's evidence. She looked at the crumpled paper in her fist, then back at me. Her chest rose and fell faster, and then she tore it in half. The sound was louder than it should have been, like cloth ripping instead of paper. Shreds of Grandpa's handwriting fluttered to the garden floor. There, she snarled. No more fantasy. I blinked once, slowly. You really think I'd bring the only copy? Her face changed, a shade paler, a breath shorter. She turned toward the house. Inside, Ross's phone buzzed once. He checked the screen and smiled. The court just acknowledged receipt, he murmured to Josh. It's on record. I didn't say another word. I just turned my back and walked toward the fog. Behind me, her scream echoed through the estate. But the scan had already reached the court. Justice doesn't knock. It kicks the damn door in. The courtroom smelled like old paper and quiet threats. Polished wood gleamed under dim, fluorescent lights, and long shadows reached across the floor like claws. The silence before the session felt surgical, cutting through pretense, laying everything bare. I adjusted my coat and stared straight ahead. No hesitation, no retreat. Reporters lingered near the back wall, whispering to each other. Some recognized me, others just smelled scandal. I caught Allison Tran's eye in the gallery. She gave a small nod, notebook in hand. Her headline had already been drafted. All she needed now was blood on the floor. Harper sat 2 rows down, spine rigid, face composed. But the whites of her eyes betrayed her. She hadn't slept. Her pearl necklace gleamed too brightly under the courtroom lights, like it knew it was about to snap. The judge entered, an older woman with tired eyes and a spine made of iron. She looked at us the way surgeons look at tumors, with calm detachment and an intent to cut. This is docket 324B, she began, regarding the contested last will and testament of Everett Whitmore. The court has received 2 versions of the document. Let us begin with counsel. Mr. Ross stood, buttoning his coat with quiet confidence. Your Honor, we present into evidence a handwritten draft dated July 9th, 2023, verified by 2 prior samples from Mr. Whitmore's legal history. The handwriting has been forensically confirmed. This version names Lena Whitmore as the primary heir. He walked to the table and placed the folder with reverence. The judge took it without ceremony. Ross continued. We also submit Exhibit B, a financial ledger recovered from the Whitmore estate's internal archives. The entries indicate repeated withdrawals and transfers totaling over $780,000, routed through accounts controlled by Harper Whitmore. A murmur rippled through the room. Ross held up another page. Here is the bank's verification of those accounts, alongside wire confirmations dated within 2 weeks of Lena Whitmore's legal declaration of death. The judge raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting motive. Not suggesting, Your Honor. Establishing. I felt Harper's stare like knives across my neck. Then Josh stood. He didn't ask permission. He just rose, shaky but sure, and spoke. I was there, he said, when Harper transferred the funds. I didn't understand what it meant at the time, but I saw the ledger. I saw her go through Grandpa's study. I didn't say anything, and I should have. Harper bolted upright. That's a lie. The judge held up a hand. You'll have your turn. Ross stepped forward again. We also present a log from St. Peter's notary office. Harper visited on August 1st, the day the disputed will was filed. That notary, as this court is aware, has since been shut down for document tampering. Harper's lips parted. For a second, I thought she might faint. But no, she was too proud for that. Instead, she stood. Your Honor, this is a smear campaign. That woman, she pointed at me like I was rot-made flesh, was declared dead. She's an imposter, a liar, a fraud. The judge turned her gaze on me, then back to Harper. Her voice dropped into something cold and precise. This may go beyond civil fraud, she said. You could be looking at criminal charges. The air sucked from the room. Harper's hand flew to her chest, and the string of pearls around her neck snapped. Beads scattered across the hardwood floor, bouncing and rolling like teeth knocked loose from a jaw. She stared down at them, frozen, as if watching her world fracture in real time. And somewhere behind me, Allison clicked her pen once. Her headline already pulsed in my mind. The heiress they declared dead. A family's lie unraveled. 10 years ago, they wrote my ending. Today, I claimed the pen. The judge's final ruling echoed across the polished courtroom, crisp and deliberate. My legal identity, Lena Whitmore, was officially reinstated. The death certificate, the false filings, the fraudulent will, all nullified. The court clerk stamped the documents with a thud that felt like thunder cracking through the last of their illusions. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, but because I'd run out of tears long ago. What I felt now was something colder, something cleaner, like clarity after a long illness. Harper didn't look at me as they led her away. Her lawyer flanked her, murmuring with increasing urgency. She didn't speak, didn't struggle. The pearls were gone from her neck, replaced by the stiff collar of a trench coat. The courtroom doors swallowed her, and with them, the lies she'd wrapped around my name. Margaret wept in silence, dabbing at the corners of her eyes with a fraying tissue. But there was no mascara to smudge, no real grief to mask. Gregory sat beside her, unmoving, face blank as stone. A man who'd built his life on appearances now had nothing left to perform. Mr. Ross stood at my side, offering the court-certified reinstatement document with quiet dignity. "Congratulations," he said. "It's over." "No," I said softly. "It's just even." Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds. For the first time since I stepped back into this world, the light didn't sting. It felt earned. Josh waited near the steps, coat slung over one arm, eyes wary. He approached cautiously. "I should have said something sooner," he said. "Back then, I was scared." "I know," I replied. "I'm sorry," I nodded. "Thank you for helping when it mattered." He started to say more, but I held up a hand. There was nothing else to unravel. I'd accepted his guilt, and that was enough. He stepped back, letting me go. My phone buzzed. A new notification from Allison Tran's podcast feed lit up the screen. Buried by Bloodline, the Whitmore case, final episode. I played it without headphones, letting her voice blend into the morning. "Today," she said, crisp and confident, "Lena Whitmore walked out of court not just alive, but unburied. For years, her story was stolen, her name erased by the very people who claimed to love her. But truth, like blood, always finds its way to the surface." I reached the front gates of the Whitmore estate. Tall, iron-wrought, once a wall I couldn't climb. I turned back for one last look. The house loomed in the distance, proud but hollow. The ghosts inside could keep each other company now. From my coat pocket, I pulled the laminated obituary they'd published when they declared me dead. My smile stared back at me from the black and white print. Young, trusting, naive. I tore it in half. The wind carried the pieces down the path behind me. I didn't look back again. I walked away, not as the girl they erased, but as the woman they couldn't. In the end, truth didn't need to shout. It simply arrived, steady and undeniable. What began as a quiet return turned into the unraveling of an empire built on lies, with the ones who once silenced her forced to answer for the silence they imposed. Justice didn't come quickly, but it came armed with proof, patience, and a name no longer buried. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.